There we go. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Welcome to Portugal. I'm sure you weren't expecting German efficiency, so we did it on purpose, by the way. Just to give you the full Portuguese experience. We didn't want you, starting a little late. That's just the way we do things. Okay, so many thanks, Professor Paula, for the invitation. I'm basically going to talk to you a little bit about climate change. I understand this is one of the key topics of your event today. I got all my students. They're super happy because it was this or doing a horrible model on stock assessment. So you can see the smiles on their faces because they get to do this instead, which is a lot more fun. So we live in this beautiful planet, which seen from far when Apollo 18, I believe, took that very iconic photo of the Earth, against the black background. That was the first time we saw our planet like that, and everybody was amazed. Now there's a bunch of idiots saying that it never happened, but we're not even going to give them any second. But we are doing some evil things to our planet, and I like to use that image that you may have heard about the frog in the pen. Culture says that if a frog touches a pan that's full of boiling water, of course it'll jump out. But if it's put in the pan with the warm water and then it gently warms up, it'll eventually just stay there until the skin drops off the bones. I have no idea if that's true, and I'm not about to sacrifice a little frog to find out, but that's the story. And that's sort of the moral, or let's say the metaphor behind this talk today, is that maybe that's us. Maybe we're a frog in the pan, just, leisurely talking about climate change and what we should do, but we're not actually doing, or our leaders are really not doing enough. And we're just kind of casually whistling and just hoping that everything goes for the best, while not really taking effective change. One very important thing to consider is that our planet is very small. Now, when you take a flight to Auckland, New Zealand, or 2 flights, and you're cramped and you've got your chin, if you're tall like me and you've got your chin between your knees, bless you, then it feels like our planet is not very small. It feels very, very long indeed because it takes forever to get anywhere. But when you think about it, we could all jump on a plane now, and we could have dinner in Sydney tomorrow. So it is a very, very small plane, a very small planet, especially with the technology that we have available. 200 years ago, a guy would say goodbye to his family, and they would go on a sailing ship to go whale hunting or something. And so, honey, when will you be back? Well, I have no idea. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, I could just get killed. So that was the way things were 100 years ago. These days, 40 hours basically, is how much it takes to go around our planet. It's 40,000 kilometers in perimeter. Planes travel more or less at 1,000 kilometers an hour. So it is a very small planet, especially, of course, when you compare it to giants, like Jupiter and Saturn. They're gas giants, but still, it's an exceptionally small planet. And consider that our planet is like a basketball, okay? And now we're going to wrap it in cellophane, wrap it in the stuff you put on your lunch so it doesn't go bad afterwards on your leftovers. The thickness of that cellophane around the basketball is more or less the thickness of the atmosphere around the planet. So it's exceptionally thin. That's the bottom line here. It's a very small planet. It doesn't take much to do things in it. We can travel from A to Z on the other side in 24 hours. And the atmosphere around it is very, very, very thin. So keep that on your memory, on your hard drive, because we're going to go back to this concept later. But it's important to understand it's a small planet with a very thin atmosphere around it. Now let's go back to the days where there were no problems. Mankind was at peace with nature. We would eat some animals, eat some vegetables. The animals would eat us sometimes. Things were more or less peaceful, we didn't have really any impact. But as mankind grew, we discovered fire, we found the wheel, and then iron, and steel, and bronze, and all of these things. And very, very soon, we became famous in the galaxy. I'm just making stuff up now, but it very soon became apparent that we were just a cruel, vicious breed, race, a species. We're horrible people. I mean, consider that everybody's having their dinner, and there's this king, whatever, and it's like, oh, you know what we're missing at this dinner is the land of this guy next door. So tomorrow let's all get our swords and we'll go there and kill everybody and take that land. And then they have dinner there and, well, this is a really nice dinner, but I really need all this other land. And this has been going on forever, since day one. There's actually a lot of anthropological, a lot of fossils of basically Neanderthals, Cro-Magnons with cracked skulls, and you can see it was cracked with a blunt object. Maybe the guy just fell and boom, cracked the skull. But more than likely, from the fossils we're seeing, very, very early on, people were just killing each other, just for the sake of killing each other, most likely to get more, to have more, which is sickening, but it is what it is. And here we are, 2024. We've got our, all of the knowledge of the planet is in this machine that we all have in our pockets. And we see it now. Ukraine, Israel, the list goes on forever. Africa, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, it doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop, this need to constantly have more, to be more, to get more, to kill the other guy, to take his stuff. It just doesn't stop. Anyway, I don't want to get any more depressed. But we all kind of know that this is how things go, basically. Then, it was all fun and games when you had spears and bows and arrows and this sort of stuff, and you're just kicking people and clubbing them in the head. This was all much fun. Until we got to this stage. Late 19th century, 1800s, late 1800s, the Industrial Revolution. And this absolutely changed everything. Because up until this point, this was the limit of mankind. Our hands, our legs, okay, a few horses, a few bulls that would help us push stones and that sort of thing. But this was physically our limit. We couldn't do more than push stuff or club stuff to death or do whatever. But the Industrial Revolution brought us machines. And the machine has no limit. A machine, you give it enough steam, you give it enough diesel, a few years after, of course, you give it enough power, and this machine will lift the building this size. This machine will put a rocket that's 100,000 tons up in the air, up in space. So there was no limit after the Industrial Revolution. You could basically do whatever the hell you wanted. We became limitless, boundless. So then, of course, after coal and steam, which was what was driving machines in the Industrial Revolution, we found diesel, and then gasoline, and then of course nuclear, and again, no more limits. Whatever little limits we had with steam, they basically disappeared. With nuclear energy, we can literally blow up the planet. If we put our minds to it, if we could actually come up with enough contraptions where you would press the button and blow this thing to hell, we could actually do that. Thankfully, nobody had that bright idea yet, although some idiots have been very, very close. But we have that ability these days, which is a very, very, very scary thing. So this is when our little frogs started to get really scared. Holy shit, pardon my French, but it just doesn't sound the same when it's in English. If I said it in Portuguese, everybody's like, oh my gosh, João is so rude. But if I say it in English, it's kind of funny, right? But anyway, apologies if I watch too much South Park and Simpsons and Seinfeld, and my language sometimes just slides out. Anyway, so this is when the frogs started to get a little scared. Even more scared when this came up. This is the middle of the 20th century. And mankind truly lost its course. At this point we have one guy with a silly little mustache, having dinner, thinking, you know what we need? We need to rule the freaking world. We need to rule all of Europe, and we need to take care of all this stuff, and all of this needs to be ours. We're going to rule all of this. And this happened. And bear in mind that at this point we have the technology to end the world, you know, and all these scientists further developed this technology, and after World War II, half of those scientists went to America, half of those scientists went to Russia, and we all know what happened after, you know, and what the world has been like in the last 70 years. However, immediately after the war, there was a brief period of peace, of happiness, where everybody was like, oh my God, we got rid of the last lunatic that wanted to rule the world. You know, we've divided this country in four. Everything's going to be beautiful from now on. No more lunatics. We've got the United Nations, which is going to work so well, and it's going to solve all the problems of the world. We're never going to have problems in the world again. You know, this is what people thought in the 50s. You know, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but that was the sentiment. People thought, oh, no, this is really cool. Let's go and have babies. Let's go and make a lot of babies. Everybody's going to be happy. We're going to have 2 cars and a dog and a picket fence. We're going to have a color TV. And everybody's going to be happy, and the world just went on a totally crazy direction. And that shows. And when we look at the human population, which, if this was a chart to scale, you know, we have 2,000 years. Of course, it doesn't show here. Yeah, I always forget that. And I'm like, it's broken. Anyway, if we went back 10,000 years, you know, so the pyramids were built like right around here, 3000 BC, more or less, give or take. The aliens gave them a hand. I'm just joking. And then 7,000 years before, whatever, you know, people, and we have like a flat line. That's just flat, very, very, very low line, until we get to right around the Industrial Revolution, which is when we hit 1 billion. So 1 American billion, so 1,000 million. So that was a pretty significant mark, you know, for 15,000 years below a billion. And then this billion doubled between both world wars. 1927, so 100 years ago, give or take, we had 2. 100 years after, there's 8. So we quadrupled. This is insane. Anyone who works in science and has dealt with bacterial growth or viruses or whatever, if you had an exponential function like this, you would go, holy shit, this is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You have a flat line like this, and then at the very last minute, it just shoots up. And this is us. This is our species. This is what technology brought us, which is obviously a good thing. This is what vaccines and everything, you know, no less and less infantile mortality, which is awesome. Greater longevity, you know, people are dying later. These are all great things, you know. We've got medicine, we've got amazing technology, we've got all of this stuff, but there's a very, very heavy price to pay for having all that cool stuff. I mean, this is the discussion that nobody wants to have. How do you fix this? Yeah, I'll just leave the room and leave you guys to have this discussion. It's a very complicated discussion, because we've got all this amazing technology to save lives, but then there's a very, very heavy price, and that's the discussion no one wants to have. Anyway, lots and lots of frogs. We're having some problems now because there's just so many frogs. And really, remember, very small planet. You know, we're getting to the point where maybe there's too many frogs for our very, very small planet. But now, my background is actually fisheries. So bear with me for 3-4 slides as I pull your heads into the fisheries subject. And you'll understand why. Because there's a very good parallel between fisheries, and this is particularly important for the students back here. There's a very interesting parallel between fisheries and, you know, and climate change and what's happening to our planet. So don't mind the numbers. This is basically one of those generic charts you pull off Google, basically saying we're catching a lot of fish. You know, 18 million tons by China, 5 million tons by Europe. And the point I'm trying to make here, not one soul on this planet, and when you look at these charts of stocks being fully exploited, fish stocks going down, I don't think there's one person on the planet that would argue that the oceans are in trouble, that we've been catching far too many resources, far too many fish. Not one person. As you well know, when you talk about climate change, and especially when you go on social media, not the scientific literature, but you go on social media, you get like half and half. Half crazies that say, no, there's no problem, this is all Al Gore and Greta Thunberg trying to make a living for themselves. There's really no problem with climate change. And then you have, smart people who actually understand that there is a very important problem. But nobody is stupid enough to say, there's no problem with the oceans. The oceans are fine. We're not catching too much fish. There is not such a person. Everyone on the planet understands that the oceans are in trouble. Now let's consider some numbers. And this is a very busy slide, but don't worry about the detail. We've got, this is all from official websites. We've got about 1.5 billion cars, buses, motorcycles, trucks, vehicles. We've got about 1.5 billion, so that's 1,500 million. We have about 25,000 airplanes, circling the air, some on the ground. We have 93,000 ships. You go to marinetraffic.com and you'll see ships all over the place. We've got about 10 million factories, just factories. We've got 10 million factories. We've got about 4.6 million fishing vessels. So it's a lot of machines, And bear in mind, all of these machines are running on a combustion engine, which is basically a chamber, a box, a metal box, a steel box, where you put fuel, that fuel ignites. And when that fuel ignites, it pushes the piston. And that's it. That's all an engine is. It's a box, it's a hole where you put fuel, diesel, gasoline, whatever, hydrogen. And that thing ignites and it pushes a little stick. And all the little sticks, because the engine has more than one cylinder, and they're all connected to this one wavy piece of metal, and they're all going to go and make that wavy piece of metal turn. It's a tree of cams, I don't know how to call it in English. Anyway, it's so this thing is going to go and make something turn. And that's it. That's what an engine is. And it'll make a wheel turn, it'll make a propeller turn, something will turn. So, we're talking 1,500 million engines working this way, launching carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and so many other things up to the atmosphere. Remember, the cellophane-thin atmosphere around our very, very small planet. And we've been doing that for 150 years, since the Industrial Revolution. Meanwhile, some 4-something million fishing vessels completely depleted the main oceanic stocks in 4 decades. After the 70s. That's all it took for some 80% of the main fish stocks, codfish, swordfish, most sharks, tuna, anchovies, the main fish stocks in 30-40 years, they're down like 90%. Not one soul on the planet is silly enough to argue that, to say, no, everything's good with the fish stocks. Not one person. The most imbecile idiot on the planet will not argue that the oceans are at risk. And it took 30 or 40 years by 4 or 5 million fishing vessels to do that. How will 1,500 million combustion engines for 150 years not have an impact? You have to be demented to not see, how is it possible? All the way back to 1912, some people were having these thoughts. This is an obscure small journal in New Zealand. This came to light some time ago. It's actually true. And this guy said, we're burning all this coal. This is back in the coal days. We're burning all this coal. We're launching all these tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. I think sooner or later we're going to have some problems. This was 112 years ago. Some people were already thinking, I think it's too much stuff that we're sending up to the atmosphere. 112 years later, half of the population still thinks that's not a problem. We can do all we want to the atmosphere. It's never going to be any problem. It's insane, complete insanity. And then, of course, we came up with these charts. Quite a few scientists have done studies around the world. They've taken ice cores from the Arctic. They've taken ice cores from the Antarctic. They've ran some very, very basic chemical experiments in the lab. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how it's done, but it is easy. It's easily replicable. You get those samples to any lab in the world. You use the same protocol. Everybody comes to the same conclusion. CO2 concentrations have been fluctuating over the last 400,000 years. We know this. It's fine. You know, we've had a lot of CO2. We've had a little CO2. We've had a lot of CO2. Global temperature pretty much follows the same trend. We are able to measure what the temperature was when that ice was formed 100,000, 200,000 years ago. Sea level is the easiest of all. You take the drive along this road here to the center of Peniche. As you get close to the center of Peniche, just look to your left. You'll see Praia de Gamboa. Okay, it's like this very small bay. Look to the rocks on your left side as you drive into Peniche. And you see all these layers and layers and layers. Some of them are actually tilted because something from beneath pushed them up. So this is the easiest. The geologists basically look at the rocks and, okay, this is where the sea level was 150 million or 1,000 years ago. This is where so this is the easy part. You just look and see where the sea level was. And these are very easy tests to do in the lab. So not surprising, we've seen that there's a very direct correlation between CO2 concentration. The more CO2, the more greenhouse effect. You know, if there's more stuff in that cellophane thin atmosphere around a very small planet, which doesn't take much to fill, you know, we're going to drive temperature up. Because if there's more stuff up there, it's going to, basically, the sun rays are going to come down, they're going to hit the earth, and then they're not going to have enough power to get back. You all know what the greenhouse effect works like. So it's going to heat up, and of course if it's going to heat up, it's going to melt some ice, and it's going to cause problems, and the sea level is going to rise. So this is very basic knowledge, and very basic logic. But here's the thing. Climate change deniers keep saying, well, but you know, we've always had ups and downs. You know, we've had up to 300 ppm, parts per million, so many times. But here's the thing they consistently forget. Yeah, but we're now measuring in excess of 400. We're actually getting close to 500 ppm on the atmosphere. Now that never happened. Well, not in these last 400,000 years. We did have more than 500, even more ppm, back when the planet was like planet Mustafar, if you're a Star Wars fan, which is basically all volcanoes and sulfur in the air. Yeah, sure, you know, we have a lot of CO2 back in the atmosphere. In those days where all we had was half a dozen bacteria that could survive there. But not in the normal times. You know, this kind of atmosphere, of environment that we have now, we never had above 300, and now, miraculously, but as a coincidence, human activities are at the same time that this is going all the way up to 500. And still, some people say, it's not related to human activities, this is all normal. What are you talking about? We've had a cycle of 400,000 years, and we broke that cycle. And that coincides with 150 years of 1.5 billion combustion engines sending gases up to a cellophane-thin atmosphere. Who is the idiot that doesn't understand this extremely basic logic? So, anyway, I get a little heated when I talk about these things, because I just don't understand how people don't understand it. But anyway, why did I put the bison here? Because a lot of times people say, well, human activity isn't strong enough to have an effect on a global scale. as if we're small, as if we're negligible. We're not going to have an effect on a global scale. Well, a couple dozen guys with shotguns, colonizing America, got rid of these things. There were millions and millions of them. It didn't take a hell of a lot of technology. It was Buffalo Bill and his friends. The Indians survived, with eating buffalo and using buffalo and bison for their tents and clothes and everything for thousands of years. Take a bunch of Europeans, colonizing a new continent, give them a couple of shotguns with bullets, and they'll get rid of this in like 10 or 15 years. So we do have quite a big impact. A bunch of guys in sailboats, not even an engine, sailboats, would go out from Europe, from America. They would sail around the oceans of the planet. They would go around the Cape of Good Hope, the Cape Horn, completely wiped out whales. Whales didn't go extinct thanks to World War I. That's what saved whales, because World War I brought a lot of technology, a lot of development, engines, oils and lubricants, and all of this stuff was basically manufactured in factories, in labs, and it became so cheap to make lubricants and all of that stuff in a factory that was basically pointless to go out on a big ship for 3 years to get a bunch of whales to get that point. It was just stupid. So that's what saved whales. If it weren't for World War I, we would basically have 0 whales on this planet, because at the rate it was going to be another 10 or 15 years to wipe out the last whale, like we killed the last dodo on the planet, the last great hawk, those big bird, looks like a penguin, but it's totally unrelated to a penguin. There's a statue in Iceland that I've seen it a few years ago. It's the statue of the last great northern hawk, A-U-K. No, not hawk like bird of prey, but A-U-K hawk. I don't know, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Anyway, that bird was very abundant in that area, and it was basically, they were all killed, for ornamental reasons, because people would use the feathers to do heads and that sort of thing. So, anyone who says that the human species has no impact on the planet is stupid. Because we have a lot of impact, and it really doesn't take that much time to have a tremendous impact. But we've done some pretty evil things. We've also done some pretty good things. The hole in the ozone layer, which was just growing and growing because of all our deodorant and the CFCs and all our, the hairspray and all of this stuff. And then we realized, scientists came and said, listen, we're just killing ourselves. We're throwing all this stuff in the atmosphere. The hole in the ozone layer is just growing and growing. People down in Australia, New Zealand, that are getting skin cancer like crazy. The kids can't go outside because they're just getting burned. We gotta do something about this. And for some strange, unexplained reason, we actually succeeded. We changed the law. We banned CFCs. And the hole is now regressing. So we actually managed to get this thing on track. To solve this problem, or at least we're on the way to solve this problem. For some reason, this problem was obvious to everyone, and we managed to persuade the leaders of the world, okay, we gotta do this, let's fix it. And everybody went, okay, let's fix this thing. But climate change, for some reason, everyone is like, well, we gotta study this, we gotta put a committee together to see if this committee is doing the right thing, so the other committee can decide on what, it's just dragging. Anyway, so basically our frog is very, very, very scared, and at the same time just leisurely, enjoying the warm-up of the water. So, very quickly, let's look at that bad stuff, because I haven't mentioned enough bad stuff already, so let's just mention a few more bad things. So the glass half empty. So this is a simulation. While the talk is just going to go, these are satellite photos, so it's not Photoshop. Well, maybe there's some Photoshop just to make it pretty. But these are basically satellite photos taken from the Arctic over the last 50 years. And sure enough, there's some years there's more ice, other years there's less ice and more ice and less ice. But it's pretty obvious. You don't need to have a degree in statistics to see what the trend is doing. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. But it doesn't really take a genius to see that the amount of ice is what's happening. I mean, it's just getting lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. Then we have to remind ourselves that there's ice above the water, and of course, if that ice melts, it's a huge world. There's ice underwater, which if it melts, okay, it's going to have an impact on volume, but it's not the end of the world. But the ice above the water in Antarctica is mostly ice above the water level, and that's going to have a freaking huge impact. The Arctic as well, but not as let's say, catastrophic. And then we've got a few simulations. You go on the internet these days and you get a bunch of these. This is Florida, this is Miami, and the current situation, and what will happen if the water level rises just by 3 meters. Basically, there's no more Miami. You cannot go get a drink in Coconut Grove anymore, unless you have a canoe. Otherwise, it's looking very scary. This is Lisbon. We don't often think about Lisbon. Very nice town. We've made a big effort in the last 30 years to get Lisbon closer to the river. A lot of bars and restaurants and people playing saxophone while you're having your gin and tonic in the middle of the afternoon. But bear in mind, this simulation even says that this is probably an understatement. It'll probably be worse than this. But if you get like a 10-meter rise, which is really not that much, well, when you look at it, it doesn't look that serious. But again, if you want to grab a drink in Dockish, that very swanky place near the 25th of April, you gotta go in a canoe again. So that's the only way you're going to have a burger there. So we might as well buy one of those rubber little diggy toys, because things are getting scary. Now, bear in mind, this is where the irony comes now. We basically started this. Western civilization, Europeans, America, Canada, Europeans that went to America, killed all the Indians, and then basically, so Western civilization started this. We started the Industrial Revolution, and of course now we've got India, we've got China, and we love to point our fingers at India and China. Oh, those crazy guys are polluting the atmosphere. Well, yeah, but they're just doing what we did for 150 years. I mean, it's very easy for us now to put our green hats and, let's save the planet. And no, you guys, you gotta stay behind the docks, plowing rice. You're not allowed to get all the technology that we, obviously, they want to come up, and so should they. Anyway, but the irony is that we basically, as temperatures are rising and it's starting to affect the Arctic a lot, and it's starting to affect salinity. It's starting to affect the Gulf Stream, which basically brings heat to Europe from the tropics. So the irony is that, in a way, we caused climate change, or we started this trend, and our punishment is basically we're going to get too cold, because we're affecting things in a way that we're just going to get more and more severe storms. This movie actually talks about that. And there's one line of dialogue that's sort of in the middle of the movie that goes very unnoticed. But at one point, there's one British scientist, Scottish, I believe, that's on the phone with the American scientist, the hero of the movie. And he's like, we've been measuring the Gulf Stream current, and it's lower and lower, and we've been telling people about this for decades. We've been telling everybody that climate change is causing the Gulf Stream to lose its power, and it's carrying less heat from the tropics, but no one listened to us. So there is that line in this movie, which of course is a Hollywood depiction of this, which is kind of silly because everything is fine on a Monday and the whole world, or the northern hemisphere, is frozen on Tuesday. So things don't actually happen that fast. But the sentiment is the same. I mean, it's taking longer, but the logic is there. And these guys actually understood what was happening, although they had to speed it up, to fit it in a 120-minute movie. Anyway, so the funny thing is, again, that us Europeans, North Americans, caused all this. We set the humanity on this trail, and now we want to freeze to death. And of course, the Inuit people are laughing like, now you guys will finally see what it's like to live in sub-zero temperatures. So, needless to say, more and more severe storms. And again, every time a severe storm, a tornado, something horrible happens, everybody comes, half of the public will come out and say climate change. The other half will say, well, what the hell are you talking about? We always have storms. We always have tornadoes. 100 years ago, my grandfather lost his house because the house blew away. So people always find excuses. But one thing we are seeing is that every storm is basically becoming more and more severe, more and more vicious. Now, 2 years ago, we were all horrified by the heartbreaking images of koalas on fire. There's always been forest fires in Australia. We always have forest fires in Portugal, in Spain, in Greece, in Canada. Every year we have it, but it's becoming more vicious. It's becoming more intense. It's becoming more unmanageable. Canada was practically on fire last summer. Not this year, the 2023. And again, every fireman would come on TV and say, we don't know what to do. We're totally unprepared. Yes, we've always had fires. And this is just too vicious. It's too intense. It's too hot. It's too crazy. There's nothing we can do. Our job is basically to put people to safety, get them out of their homes, just let all this burn. Because there's really nothing we can do. So things are getting more and more intense. And still everybody cries, there's always been fires, there's always been floods, there's always been tornadoes. I don't know what the hell the climate people are arguing about. Not noticing that every phenomenon is getting more and more intense. So, getting on to the last bit, and so we don't have anyone jumping. Well, you wouldn't really hurt yourself if you jumped from this window. But anyway, so let's look at some positive things. So let's see if we give our little frog some hope. Basically, what do we need to do? Well, we need to get carbon dioxide and other gases, of course, to get methane and carbon monoxide. We need to get stuff out of the atmosphere, or at the very least, we have to stop filling it up as intensely and as crazy as we are at this moment. Because what we're doing now is just pumping it up. And imagine, again, the basketball with the cellophane tire. If you have a bicycle, if you ride a bicycle and you fill your tires by hand, like I do, it's hard work, that's fine. If you have kids, I have a 5-year-old, and he has a tiny little bicycle with tiny little tires, it's very easy. It takes me like 3 pumps, and that tire is rock hard. If I have a tractor, big ass tractor, huge tractor, and I'm there, it's probably going to take me the whole afternoon. So, we're the tiny little bicycle. It doesn't take much to fill up our tire, to fill up our atmosphere. We're not goddamn Jupiter or Saturn that's just huge. We're the small tire. And for 150 years, we're now at 1.5 billion combustion engines. That's holes where combustible explodes and boom, it sends exhaust gases up to the atmosphere. And here we are for 150 years, 24/7, just pumping stuff into the atmosphere. So we need to stop it. So what do normal people, what can normal people like us do? And now I'm going to show you 3-4 slides that will be ridiculous. Ridiculous. You're going to look at it like, what? I came to Paniche to see this silly thing. I mean, we all know this. We all know that it's important to climb stairs instead of taking the elevator. You've heard this 1,000 times before. But bear with me, I will explain why the simple steps, literally, are so important. Let's not have our air conditioning regulated to freezing temperatures in the summer, boiling temperatures in the winter. Is anyone here from America? Because I don't want to sound too okay, but it's fine. Right? The reason I ask this is because I go to conferences in America just about every year. They're usually in the summer. And I swear to God, my back, when I go to the conference in Houston, Texas in August, looks like my back when I go to a conference in Tromsø, Norway in November. It's the same. Because I'm sitting in this huge hotel room and I'm freezing my ass off. Because they set this thing for 15 degrees Celsius as it seems. I have ice coming out of my nostrils. I go in there, I get to the airport in my flip-flops and my shorts. I have my Hawaiian shirt. I'm happy. I'm gonna get the conference, you know, have some drinks, see my good friends that I see once a year. No. Check in the hotel, go down to the, you know, the conference hall, and I gotta put on my socks, my shoes, my long jeans, my long sleeve shirt, my winter coat, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what the hell? And it's just freezing. And do we really need that? You know, do we really need to keep temperatures that cold inside the buildings in the summer? It's just this complete waste of energy. You know, I worked at so these are regulators of, you know, of light or pumps, whatever. You can regulate the power. I worked at the Oceanario, the big aquarium in Lisbon. I don't know if you guys had a chance to go there. If you do, please do. You know, I worked there, so I'm biased, but it is one of the nicest aquariums in the world, doing lots of amazing work for conservation and everything. Anyway, at one point, we installed the technical department, these variators of speed for pumps. There's a lot of pumps moving on that water, as you can imagine. The savings in the electrical bill, after installing these things in all the pumps of the building, was up to 30-something%. It's crazy, just by not having the pumps running at full speed the whole time, to actually install this stuff, it cost a freaking fortune. But in 2-3 years, the investment was paid for. And the computer basically manages, you know, this pump doesn't need to go full speed, it can only go 73%, whatever. The savings are astronomical. So imagine millions and millions of factories, of homes, of buildings doing that around the planet. Immediately you have a tremendous savings, tremendous energy that's not being used, tremendous amounts of gases that are not going up to the atmosphere. Don't even get me started on water. That would be a whole new lecture on its own, but you know, the critical importance of saving water, but we're not going to get into that, but you know, I don't need to tell you guys how insanely important. And now, separating our garbage, we used to call recycling. It's more than just recycling. It's a mindset, a mind frame to separate our garbage. And again, now you guys see this image and you're like, geez, well, that's pretty 1980s, you know, talking about separating garbage when you talk about climate change. There's a reason why I'm putting all this very simple stuff here, and that is the numbers. So, sorry, this is still in Portuguese. Good opportunity for you guys to learn some Portuguese, but I'll translate to you. I totally forgot about this, sorry, that's wrong. Anyway, I live in a building in Lisbon that has about 40 apartments. So let's imagine that half of them, you know, myself, my wife, my son, we do this. You know, we're pretty paranoid about it. You know, plastic goes in the yellow thing, paper goes there, glass goes in the green. So with my son, my wife, we go out a couple of times a week and we just put it in the eco punto, as we call it in Portugal, the eco point. Okay. So let's imagine half of the people in my building do it, and the other half are like, nah, those idiots, you know, it's pointless because the garbage truck's going to come, it's going to put it all in the same place, and let's not bother. That's pretty much how society is these days. Half of the people are worried about these things, the other half are like, what's the point, you know, I don't do it, no, whatever. So let's imagine my street has about 80 buildings, and half of those 80, so 40, are doing this thing, the other half is not. I don't know how many streets there are in Lisbon. I just made up a number. I'm thinking 2,000 streets in Lisbon. Half of them, 1,000 streets, are doing this thing. The other one aren't. Let's say there's 2,000 towns, cities, small towns, big towns in Portugal. Half of them, 1,000, are doing this. The other ones aren't. There's 200 countries, give or take, on the planet. Half of them, 100, are doing this. The other aren't. The other half isn't. So when you multiply all that, basically you get 80,000 million. Now multiply that by 7 days a week, 30 days a month, 12 months in a year. Let's look at a decade. And you basically get 2016 million millions. Now, the very basic, simple things. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Let me just brag for a little bit. I've been teaching here in Peniche since 2005, and we have an elevator for the first floor and for the second floor. We teach here usually on the second floor in our offices. Never since 2005 have I taken this elevator, like ever. And I always, or sometimes I tell the students, if you see me get in that elevator, I will give you 5 euros. So there was a time they would go, he's going to get in the elevator, but I always want. So what is the point? It's one floor. I mean, it's crazy. So the point here is the very simple, basic things. You know, don't take the elevator. Don't set the temperature so low, etc., etc., etc. All of that stuff adds up to colossal numbers. So basically, every... do you need help? No, that's fine. No problem at all. This is a big family, very informal, no problem at all. So, the point here is the numbers are staggering. So many times in a day, you know, when we go shopping, when we take the elevator or not, when we regulate the temperature, we can make a decision. And we could be on the side that does these things, or the side that just shrugs their shoulders and considers it's not important. Let's not do it because it's pointless. You can be on the good side or on the dark side if you're a Star Wars fan. And if you're on the good side, you're part of this number of people who do the cool things. If you're on the dark side, you're part of this number of people who do the uncool things. They're big numbers. And it counts. Every single little detail counts. When you go shopping, okay, you can either bring a plastic bag that's going to get degraded and somehow, you know, it's going to contribute to all of these things, or not. I have a pet hate with these very flimsy, thin plastic bags that we used to have in Portugal. I mean, we still have them, but thankfully less and less. More and more people are using like a, you know, a reusable shopping bag. Mostly because of melon. So I'm a big fan of melon, which we get in the summer. You know, the fruit, melon. It's a big fruit. It's big. It's like 5 kilos. And I swear to God, I see people sometimes in the supermarket. I buy melon in the summer, you know, when it's in season. And I'm like, and I see a big melon in this thing, and I'm thinking, what exactly is the role of this thing? You know, the person picks up the melon, puts it in that bag. You can't even pick up the bag with the melon, because the melon will stay down. It's so heavy, the bag will just puncture. So, you grab the melon, you put it in your little plastic bag in your shopping cart, and you go to the cash, you know, to the register, and you take it out of the shopping cart, you put it on the little tray, and the lady goes, or the young man goes, okay, you pay for the melon, you put it back in the shopping cart, then you push it to your car, you open the boot, you put the melon in the car, then you're going to drive home and you park, and you grab all that stuff, and you're like, okay, and you take the elevator home, or you climb the stairs, you get to the kitchen, you put all your shopping in the kitchen counter, you have your 5 kilo melon with that little stupid plastic bag. What is the first thing you do to that plastic bag? You throw it away, you put it in the trash. What exactly was the role of that plastic bag around that melon? Nothing. It achieved nothing. And this is what I'm trying to say. These little things, you multiply them by people, by the people who do it, by the people who don't do it. And you multiply, and it comes to huge numbers. Needless to say, you know, I'm a marine biologist. We're marine biologists in the background. I'm sure some of you marine biologists as well. Yes? No? What? Okay. That's okay. We like you anyway. No problem. But so turtles eat plastic bags, thinking they're jellyfish, which is the main diet for turtles. Horrible things. You know, I'm going to go through these slides very quick. I'm nearly done. These are just horrible things when you mention plastic that you couldn't not mention. You know, this horrible picture was around by email before social media. I remember receiving this in the 1990s when we would send horrible things and sometimes naughty things by email to each other, and we would send them like this. This is a mako shark with a strap. You know, fishing vessels have all these big boxes of bait, okay? And those big boxes of frozen bait usually have like a metal or a plastic strap around it. So of course, when they're taking out the bait to bait the hooks, that strap basically goes out the board. And if one poor shark or dolphin or whatever animal has the unfortunate accident of swimming this thing, look at all the muscles growing around. I mean, imagine the pain this poor animal is experiencing every minute of every hour of every day of its life. Don't started on meat. I'm not a vegetarian, but I wish I was. I know I should be a vegetarian, but I love ribs too much. Eventually I will be a vegetarian, I know that I will. But not yet, just a disclaimer. But meat is crazy. The amount of water that we spend to raise meat. You know, 1,847 American gallons, which is 7,000 liters, for 1 pound of meat. So that's 14,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of meat. It's crazy. Sometimes I imagine if alien biologists, if alien anthropologists came to our planet and started looking at the way we do things, they would go crazy, like, what the hell are these people thinking? This is insanity. What are these guys doing? So we gotta rethink this whole thing. We gotta rethink basically the way we live, the way we do things. Back in the 80s, we used to think of the 3 R's, you know, reuse, reduce, recycle. These days, we think a little more in more complex terms. We have a lot more R's. We talk a lot about circular economy. We actually have a master's program here at the school on blue and circular economy. So we basically have to rethink this whole thing, because the current status quo of just spending, and just pumping gases into our cellophane-thin atmosphere in our very, very, very small planet is a problem. It's a huge problem, and it's going to kill us all. Shopping, you know, shopping. Do we really need to buy so much shit? There's really no word for it. I mean, remember the days when we all had on our desk or even in our homes one of those big box monitor for the computer? You know, where are those? They're gone. They're all gone. They're somewhere. You know, no big monster came and ate them all. But we all have this stuff now. You know, they're cool. They're so bright. They're shiny. You know, they look really cool. But the big ones are all gone. Where are all the TVs that we used to have at home? The big box TV that we had 1 or 2 at home. I bet nobody else has one of those TVs anymore. We all have the nice, shiny, flat screen TV. I bet the old one is still working. I did the same. Don't get me wrong. I did the same. The old one, I used whatever excuse. One day it kind of twitched, but it's gone. I gotta get one of those flat ones, you know. Whatever excuse to get rid of the old thing and get the new. What is the #1 problem of the Western man and woman when we go shopping? We've got the munchies, we want to get a little snack. We get to the big hypermarket and we get there and we're like, geez, our biggest problem while people are starving in Yemen, you know, is what to choose. There's so much selection, there's so much junk all wrapped in plastic, it's crazy. Trees, plants, we don't give plants, we don't give trees enough credit. I'm an animal guy, I'm a marine biologist, like I said. I've always had a thing for sharks. I've been working with sharks for 30+ years. I never really cared much for plants, to be honest, or I never thought about them, to be honest. Not until recently. I've started working with this organization, looking at the planet. More and more, I think about plants, and I think, what an amazing thing a plant is, a tree. What an amazing thing. It's just there. It's not doing anything, it's just there. You know, but that living thing, it's just there, and it's getting water from the roots. It's getting sunlight from, you know, it's capturing sunlight from the leaves. It is producing food, organic matter. You know, cows are going to eat that grass. You know, giraffes are going to eat those branches. It's producing food from water, from sunlight. That's all it's doing. No complex mechanism. No box with the, you know, with the gas exploding. That's all it's doing. Oh, by the way, as a bonus, it's actually producing oxygen, the gas that we all need to freaking survive. That's what a plant is. It's just there, and it's just sucking water, getting sunlight, and it's producing matter. It's producing food. It's the base of the food chain of our freaking planet, and it's converting carbon dioxide to oxygen. And still we kind of tread on plants and we do. I mean, we should all go out there and just hug a plant, kiss a plant, and just go, oh my God, you're amazing, you're just there, and you're doing all this amazing work, you're out of water and sunlight, you're producing food for the whole planet, and you're producing oxygen for the whole planet. How are we not absolutely in awe at the planet? The have the meeting, you know, in front of our friends, in front of the computer. We don't have to fly all over the place, which is a good thing. Still, you know, you guys probably flew here. I'm going to fly to a meeting in Mexico next Sunday. The airports are just packed. I mean, it's crazy. Again, we have to think, do we really need all that stuff? But it is what it is. We should tell our leaders. So that's all the things that we could do, us normal people. But we should also tell our leaders. That's one thing that we don't do. We go on social media, we go on TikTok, we record all these things like, climate change, We don't actually voice our opinion to our leaders. And it could be as simple as sending an email. That's how we solved a lot of sharp problems over the years, was basically sharing emails for members of the European Parliament on social media. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, they're public domain. We just made life easier for people by sharing those emails. And we encourage people to send an email to politicians to vote yes for whatever legislation package. So we should do that for them. All of these great people have been warning the planet about climate change. Al Gore has been flying around the globe talking about this. You know, of course, it's like $50,000 to listen to his lectures, so it makes it a little hard to listen to it. But anyway, this guy's pretty famous. You know, people love Leonardo DiCaprio. He's talking about climate change. This young lady is talking about climate change. You know, a lot of people hate Greta Thunberg. I absolutely think she's amazing. This young lady did more, I think, for climate change than these two guys. She actually got the whole planet to talk about climate change. Of course, a lot of people are haters, you know, she should be in school, blah, 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 blah. But one thing no one can take away from her, she got the whole planet talking about climate change. We desperately need it. We desperately need to talk about this thing. All of these conferences that we've had in recent years, we've made some progress, not all the progress. There was one significant bit of progress in 2021. China finally committed to reducing gas emissions by 2060. And I know what you're all thinking, like, oh shit, 2060, we're all going to be dead. But it was a huge step for a huge economy like China, after decades of basically saying, nah, we're not going to do anything, to finally commit to, okay, let's do something. And even for all the other ones, the United States, European Union, etc., etc. So, whether we're going to meet these criteria and we're going to do these things, well, we'll see. That remains to be seen. But at least, we seem to have everybody committing to something. So let's see. Portugal is actually taking the lead. We're not perfect. I'm not saying that we're perfect on every measure, but we are taking some steps. We shut down our last coal power plant a couple of years ago, which is a good thing. Basically, we're signing all the agreements, you know, unlike, for example, the US then signed the Paris Agreement a few years ago. Portugal is signing all the agreements, which is a good thing. We have a pretty cool, what do you call it, bike lane thing in Lisbon. You can ride a bike pretty much everywhere in Lisbon, which is a good thing, because myself and my kid, we love to ride our bikes with my wife, and we go everywhere on bikes. You have no idea the huge arguments at the lunch table that I have with my dad and with my brother. Because they're like, oh, these bike lanes, they're a nightmare, you know, traffic is so difficult now. And I keep telling them, but traffic needs to be difficult. We need to make things more harder for traffic. We need to get cars out of the cities. We need, you know, London. If you want to drive your personal car in the center of London, forget it. You need to have like a 200-pound pass or something to do it. It's a concerted effort to get cars away, which is what we need. We need to reduce stuff. We don't need to make it easier for traffic to become bigger and bigger and bigger and more cars and more cars. Anyway, solar, needless to say, is probably going to save us all. Wind as well. And the reason I mention this is because my brother actually works for this company called Fusion Fuel. It's in Benevente, I think is the name. And they basically do green hydrogen. So basically they use wind, they use solar to produce hydrogen, which, in my opinion, is going to save us all in a few years. Obviously electric cars and everything are cool. They're a step in the right direction. No question about it. But hydrogen, I mean, come on. There's so much hydrogen. We're never going to run out of hydrogen, and it's definitely the way to go. I mentioned this before in a last slide. Don't forget to send an email to our politically appointed leaders. I bet if one email doesn't make a difference. But like I said before, when we were lobbying for sharks, we would send all these emails, and I have friends in the European Commission in Brussels who would say, "Holy cow! They're at the lunch line, to get the food on the trays," and they would comment to each other, "Holy cow! The shark people are going out of their minds. Is your inbox completely flooded with emails from the shark people?" And they were. All of the members of Portuguese members of European Parliament had their inboxes flooded with the shark nuts that wanted to protect sharks. So it makes a difference. So when the time came to vote, they all voted in favor of legislation that protected sharks. So it makes a difference. If everybody in this room today sends an email to Antonio Guterres, who's getting really hard these days, but anyway, that's another story. To our president, to our prime minister, to your prime minister, to your president, and say, "Hey, I just heard this lecture about climate change. I think we should do something about it." I don't know, anything. Something that's polite, but if they get one email, they're gonna. But if they get 20, 30, 40, 50 emails, it's going to mean something. Imagine a petition with 70,000 signatures. And a politician gets that petition. It's one email with a PDF with 70,000 signatures. Imagine if that guy or that woman got 70,000 emails. It's different. It makes a difference. So, we act as if we had two planets. We don't. We just have the one. So, hopefully, what I try to show to you today is that all of this nonsense that the human activities have no impact, it is just that. It's nonsense. There's just no way that 150 years of doing what we're doing has no impact. The logic in it, hopefully I prove that it's beyond any type of dispute. And the numbers, if we want to do the right thing, or if we're not going to do the right thing, are staggering. So it's basically up to us to make that decision every day, every hour, to influence our friends, our family, and everyone, and to basically, try to get things back on track again. Thank you so much again for your attention. Thank you, Pablo, for the kind invitation, and I wish you guys a wonderful meeting. I'm going to go down again with these guys because we still have a model to finish before